full. So anyway, welcome to the program, Mary Magdalene and Jeshua and the Mysteries of the Holy Tomb, as given by Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea. And this will be a detailed reading of the Akashic records that I have from my book. And since we're recording, I'm going to just show the book. I know all of you have it, but I'm going to read from special passages that highlight the true resurrection of Jesus and his amazing story that is, of course, controversial, but nonetheless, there are different versions of everything. And so mine is sort of a combination of things that I remember, plus things that were given to me by Joseph of Arimathea, who was the guardian, patriarchal protector of all the Essenes and all of the disciples, both female and male. And he was responsible for taking care of Jesus and tried to prevent the crucifixion. But inevitably, it led, his cleansing the temple more or less led him to that when he overturned the tables and, he was offended by the animal sacrifices. So whatever your belief system is about Jesus, it may be challenged today, but it may not, because I feel that it fits perfectly with all the other biblical accounts. Plus, there's new information coming to light about crystals in the tomb and healers in the tomb and the help that Jesus got from the archangels. So it was an amazing thing to bring forth. And I want to also honor Mary Magdalene, of course, with her contribution. So I'm going to read first from Magdalene's words in the book. And then I would like you all to just receive the energies and go into a state of meditation. If you want to mute, you can, or you can just remain unmuted and quiet. And some people may be joining us by car too. So if they do, hopefully, wait, I'm going to turn the music off. Pardon me one moment. We're getting some channeled music from Bob Murray. So I want to mention the importance of Bob Murray, because I traveled to the other side to write the book, and Bob encouraged me to work with him, but he didn't tell me exactly what was going on, just that after I arrived, so to speak, in my visual journey, going out on the silver cord and visiting his house in heaven, he had arranged for Joseph of Arimathea to be there in his study with a traveling exhibit of all the grail artifacts. And as I touched into each of the artifacts, I found that energetically I could get downloads from the Akashic records of what had been going on. And he has an entire chapter in the book on the grail artifacts and Joseph's material. So, I have many stories of the Black Madonna, and the chapter is 27, the grail artifacts speak at Bob Murray's study in heaven. But I'm going to start with Mary Magdalene, as we honor her today as well, since it's a Holy Saturday. And her contribution cannot be underestimated to supporting Jesus through the ordeal, and then supporting him after the ordeal, and the anointing and the use of the essential oils, etc. So she says here, I am pleased to come forth this day. Jeshua was reminding you of our time together in Bethany, as I was Mary of Bethany's sister in the past life. And she goes on to say, the alabaster jar contained spikenard and occupied a special place in our home in Bethany. It was kept in the house for a very long time and kept for Jeshua alone. He had told me that he would be soon made to suffer and die. It broke my heart, as I know it broke yours. We were very much a family. You, Jeshua, and I, together with our brother Lazarus and all of the disciples, had gathered there at the home. We spent the last 2 years traveling and learning his healing methods. We would bring great light into our lungs and meditate upon the sun, whatever our day. And we would use our gaze and inhale upon the sun's rays for healing. Mary continues on Holy Wednesday. As I was saying, on that fateful day, Wednesday, Jeshua had come to the house. We had just finished the washing of his feet, and then it occurred to me to go get the alabaster jar. I was so devastated that I washed his feet with my tears and wiped it with my reddish hair. When you drew me and painted me, you knew quite correctly, you remembered me as I was. Now, she goes on to confirm where he was buried in the tomb. He was buried right where you thought, right on the lower level. She's talking about Lazarus now, of the home and the current home that leads down the stairs to the secret chamber. I'm very delighted that you got to see our old home, the home of Martha and Mary in Bethany, for it was spectacular in its day, and it is still spectacular today. And then it was a fitting place for the conception of our beloved child, Sarah. You knew or suspected that I was pregnant, but you didn't ask until sometime later. Mother Mary knew by instinct that I was pregnant. So then I'm going to bring up a few images of the tomb and attempt to do the screen share now, and the beautiful garden and the holy face of the shroud. So let me see if I can get this to work now. Screen share. I found a very nice shroud picture. And are you all seeing that now? Can you see that?
Yes, it's very clear.
Yeah, okay. So Joseph confirms the validity of the resurrection through the Shroud of Turin, which was the burial shroud of Jesus. And he details how it happened. And I'll go into that in a little bit and read from Joseph's accounting of it. And then I'd like to go, you can see it's very mysterious image, and this is from the fabric itself. And you can see that there are blood stains on the fabric where the crown of thorns was placed, and that there's a very tall, strong, a man with long hair, and Roman coins are placed over the eyes. And additionally authenticating the shroud are the pollen particles that were dated, carbon dated to 2000 years ago. And then the blood was actually checked, and it's actual blood. It is not a painted image. Many paintings have been done of the image, but the Vatican, of course, authenticates it, but that doesn't mean that it's true. But I do believe it's true because Joseph told me so, and it really was caused by an incredible event. And the only way they have to explain it today is it's like an X-ray. And what they did is when they laid out the whole Shroud of Turin to scientifically examine it in the 70s, and then it's been since examined again, they found the blood, they found the pollen particles, and then there was an image like a reverse image you would find on an old photograph. And that occurred 2000 years ago. It's dated to the 1st century with the pollen. not with the fabric, but it was in a fire. So it's kept in the Cathedral of Turin, and it's brought out at Easter to show the truth of the resurrection. But there are questions and scientific inquiry going on all the time. The interesting thing about this image is that it feels to me like as I remember him, and it also feels very authentic because it's got the crown of thorns. It's got the crucifixion marks in the wrists and in the feet. And since I was there and I was administering the anointing oils, it's got that whole feeling of complete authenticity. So what happened is unexplainable, except in today's terms, because we know that a photograph uses negative and positive light. And so this is a negative, and this is actually the positive. And then it's been built into a whole 3D cardboard. And then people have done paintings from this too. But Jesus has said that, or Jeshua has said that this is him, and that it is authentic, and that a radiation light was given off from some crystals that were part of the ancient Ark of the Covenant. So apparently Joseph of Arimathea was a Sanhedrin member. And as you know, after the prophet Jeremiah, the Ark of the Covenant was sent off to another land, and it came back and forth in pieces. But the Ark of the Covenant goes way back in history to the ancient Atlanteans who used it, and it does give off radiation. So apparently this had something to do with it. So as you listen to Joseph's explanation, it will make more sense. But when I look at it, I just feel such reverence. And I think, this is where the whole idea of the holy icon and the holy grail comes in, because this is the primary holy grail. And my book doesn't go too much into it, but I'll read a little bit about it. And then I just wanted to give it an explanation in my own terms, but it's mystifying to the scientists, because it's a photographic likeness of a man when photography had not been invented, or maybe the crystal gave off that radiating light. It's an amazing thing. So let me go on to the reading with Joseph. And Bob Murray is speaking here about the secrets of Jesus's tomb. And Bob Murray had a little different take on the resurrection than I do. And he put his hand on the Holy Bible while I was there in his study in heaven, visiting the other side in my astral body, or in my mind's eye, I should say. And he said, Marcia, the Christ consciousness prepares me for what I'm about to receive through Joseph of Arimathea, regarding any new information that sheds light on what truly happened to Jeshua in the tomb and how it may be useful for today's time. Marcia, I am of course a believer in the traditional story, but that can be temporarily suspended for the purposes of investigating more into the story and the purposes of truth. May God's guiding hand and light envelop me with the holy angels, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Jeshua, and Archangel Michael himself. Father Bob, I'm going to put my hands on the Bible so we are safely surrounded. He did that for me. I'm calling on the light of Christ consciousness and my old friend, Joseph of Arimathea. This information you're about to hear, this is Bob speaking, will be a little bit unusual. Just keep an open mind and make no judgment until the session is over. Remember to always surround yourself in the light as you remain connected to your silver cord. You may experience sights and sounds yourself in this meditation. You may enter the tomb. You may see what others saw and felt at the tomb, and you may be led to an experience of how it all evolved. Joseph of Arimathea now speaks. I am here. I'm always available at Bob's request, or your request, or any sincere request, as the search for truth and knowledge is always greatly appreciated. I know what you're about to ask me, and I will settle into the other chair adjacent to Bob. I'll tell Marcia to go back into that time when you and Mary were in the tomb, and you were anointing the body of our dearly beloved Jeshua. You experienced nothing out of the ordinary, though you were a healer, and so is Mary. Yes, I am back there in the tomb. I'm seeing Jeshua's poor body. There is blood everywhere, and I'm so horrified at this incident. I don't know how this could happen to our Messiah. I'm wiping his wounds clean. Mary is applying myrrh and aloe and crying along with Mother Mary. I see that you are here too, and so is Nicodemus, meaning Joseph, and there are other female disciples. The tomb is not closed. There is a shaft of light coming through the doorway. Yes, there is enough light to see by. Though we had simple candles, it was all growing dark. Both Nicodemus and I hoisted his body down and gave it to Mother Mary, and she wept for the rest of the afternoon. She was in such shock she could barely perform in the cleansing of the body. We were all in terrific shock at this horrific sight. When the sun had set and the stone had still not been rolled away, we had access to the tomb until later that evening, when the Romans came to shut it off with the giant stone. And there is a place where the stone will roll. I will show you that in the PowerPoint. There were 2 specific healers brought into the tomb, and maybe more, who have been holding the light with the crystals. They were female. They brought in aromatic herbs and spices for the body of Jeshua, and that would be the frankincense and the myrrh, and 100 pounds of aloe. We called forth the 3 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and of course, Raphael, the healer. We laid hands on the head and the feet, and there were crystals in the caves that were energetic healing and brought forth solar healing. And so the crystals were resting at his head and feet, but there were also crystals scattered throughout the tomb, but not on the wounds. I take it the herbs and spices were applied to the wounds. Joseph, can you identify the names of the 2 healers? I'm feeling that one was possibly named Miriam and the other friend, a friend of Jeshua. Joseph, you are quite correct. Miriam was part of the secret committee. Miriam was quite a part of the secret committee. Mother Mary was there holding the light. The anointing and the cleansing had taken place, but there had been a quickening. That someone had felt a faint pulse, and the faint pulse had begun to beat once more after about 5 hours. Was it Laura who was involved in the healing? Joseph, yes, Laura Claire was involved, and that would have been Jeshua's other sister. My home was just behind the rock-cut tomb and had a secret entrance at the time, although it was a rock-hewn tomb. Another secret entrance was located out back, which had been covered over and sealed permanently. You won't see it in the garden tomb today, as it was a top secret operation. During the day Saturday, we all sent healing energy to Jeshua for his revival. And remember, this one would have been hundreds of followers sending Jesus light. And there were crystals all throughout Jerusalem as well. So these crystals were activated specifically to support his resurrection. There were strategic crystals placed in Jerusalem and right behind my house. At midnight, there was a flash of light that was emitted from the tomb, much like lightning. It left the indelible impression of Jeshua's light body on the cloth, which today is known as the Shroud of Turin. This is a genuine artifact among many others that we've referenced today. Thank you, Joseph. Were the angels invoked or called upon to send healing energy to Jeshua? The angels were constantly at work, and they contributed to the light and the raising. Archangel Metatron, the master of sacred geometry, also attended to rearrange Jeshua's subatomic particles so that he could be both in his physical and his light body. Lord Maitreya had been overlighting Jeshua through his entire 3-year ministry. Maitreya has a direct lineage to the Buddha. Jesus received his 5th initiation on the cross. He experienced great suffering, but in our opinion, he did not die, but rather went into the underworld to rescue the souls that were waiting for the light to lead the way up out of the hell places. And on that night, Jeshua had his subatomic particles and atoms rearranged with that flash of light emitted from the tomb. If you would light up a skyscraper today at midnight, this is what happened in the tomb. Most of the healers by that time were resting, but I was a witness to it. When you and Mary returned to the tomb on Sunday, the first day of the week, Mary was stable enough, and so were you, to assist Jeshua with your intent to complete the healing of the wounds. Mary had brought aloe and myrrh. Calendula was used to seal the wounds, and so was myrrh to sterilize them. When the flash of lightning occurred, it seems to have dissolved his earthly particle body and made the ascension particles more prevalent, since his atoms were spinning at a higher rate now and vibration. That is how Jeshua was able to appear and disappear, and why he looked so different to Mary. This also explains why his body was never found. There are a series of stories about people who went to bury the body elsewhere, protected Jeshua, and let him move on. We did our part to rearrange Jeshua's energy portal as much as we could humanly do. But it was quite instantaneous and fast. So in a way of speaking, Jeshua technically died for about 5 hours. Then he resurrected himself through the help of healers, the archangels, the Elohim, and the gods of this particular Milky Way, with the help of the Ark of the Covenant, or a particle of the crystal. Your new friend will be able to help testify to this transformation that Jeshua underwent. He had practiced this in the ancient temples of Egypt in previous lifetimes, but also in his stay in Egypt, where he was under the care of his father. By that time, I had replaced Jeshua's father and was his father figure. Jeshua felt very persecuted for his fine work, and there had been a misunderstanding between us, meaning Jeshua and Joseph of Arimathea. I did the best I could to assist in the rescue of Jeshua and revive him from the cross. It was quite an awful ordeal for him. Oh, Marcia, I feel like I'm touching the divine as I sit here with you, Joseph of Arimathea. You are beginning to glow with a light that is exactly Jeshua's, as I used to glow after he reappeared in his resurrection form. Joseph, you are correct, my sister. I do glow, have a glow about me and a pride in my eye, for my Jeshua was the apple of my eye. I have soul aspects on the earth plane right now that will remember the facts of this remarkable event. and I would advise you to reach them with this message as soon as possible. However, I want to say that this information will be very uncomfortable to some people, and therefore not to worry about it. It was beyond your ability as Martha to understand how such a thing could be accomplished, the resurrection. And we were not entirely sure it would happen. Most of this divine solar healing light you would describe as radiation today. Radiation emitted from the sun and then carried by the angels Metatron and Michael to the very cellular structure of our beloved Jeshua. This was so he can continue teaching the disciples and his friends and family from afar. Jeshua had to leave Palestine, for he was a wanted man, and so the various rumors were spread deliberately to confuse the people. The Romans were particularly eager to remove Jeshua, as well as the Sanhedrin, of whom I was a part. I did not vote against my beloved son, but I did all in my best to save him. It was known this would happen for some time, as the crystals in Jerusalem had been placed there at the time of Atlantis. We refer to this particle as a particle of the Ark of the Covenant, which was in my home, right behind the tomb. It was powerful, tightly locked in a place. It had to be activated and then brought into the tomb. Thank you, Joseph of Arimathea. I wonder if you could tell me more about the remnants of the Ark of the Covenant that were sealed right in behind the tomb. It was said since ancient times that the Ark of the Covenant emitted a radiation of sorts that was quite dangerous and in the form of activated crystals. Joseph, yes, that is correct. Only I and a few others knew about the presence of the remnants of the Ark. The Ark is still in existence today in a place in Ethiopia where there is a sacred church and shrine built into it. There is a high level of radiation emitting from that church, and it is dangerous to the average human. There is the solar encapsulation of radiation that was emitted, which assisted Jeshua to resurrect his body. This is all top secret knowledge up until now and was only available to a very few. The whole operation was top secret, as we wanted Jeshua to continue in his travels to England and his teaching all the way to Scotland, and then, of course, return to India, where he studied as a young boy. Well, Joseph, I have a lot to think about, and I've enjoyed my cup of tea and your story about the tomb. I've entered the tomb, and I've scarcely noticed, as the time flew by again, with the wonderful hospitality of Father Bob Murray. May I shake your hand and absorb some of your radiant glow, Joseph? Joseph, I would be honored, my lady, not only to shake your hand, but to give you my fatherly embrace, for you were my daughter in that lifetime. And I will impart my glow and send healing rays for your total healing. So, on that note, I will bring up some pictures and then I will stop the recording and go back. Are you all seeing the PowerPoint now of the Garden of Gethsemane here?
Well, we
Yeah.
still see the shroud.
Oh, you're
You
still
see the
seeing the
shroud.
shroud. Okay, let me put the shroud down and see. Oh, I think I have to share screen to the PowerPoint here. Here we go. You should be seeing the PowerPoint now, right?
Sometimes it takes a little minute.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna come up. So
There
I'm gonna
comes. There
try
comes.
to,
And I've
Um,
also learned a little trick that you can, those of us who are the viewers,
mhm,
there's a slider bar in between the images of the people down the side and the big image that Marcia is sharing. So you can squish the people farther over to the right. And then that way her picture is bigger. And now it's not working. I don't know why.
Oh, okay, so I can move
So it's
you.
nothing you do. Each person on their screen
Okay, thank
can
you.
squish the
That's great.
people, and then that makes your picture bigger.
So
No, it's
an
not right.
amazing thing happened on my healing tour in 2012 when I went to the Garden of the Resurrection. This is the Garden of the Resurrection, and you can all see it here. And
Let me interrupt again. I found the slider bar. It's exactly right on the very edge of Marcia's screen. So if you hover your pointer over it, and then that little double arrow image happens, slide her edge over and it becomes bigger. Okay, I'm done interrupting.
Thank you. That's great, because I want everybody to see.
Because then you can see much
big,
more
beautiful
detail.
Pictures. And they are, that garden had so much light of the resurrection and the angels, and I could feel it the minute I stepped in there.
So where is this physically?
This is physically out the Damascus Gate. And the Damascus Gate actually corresponds archaeologically correctly to the Way of the Cross, because we stayed at the Way of the Cross in this monastery called the Nuns of Sion or something, Sion. Oh, H.A. Homo, which means behold the man. And it was the third station of the cross, which made me really, really go to tears when I was staying in this place. But when I arrived in the place, it was along the Way of the Cross, and there were always pilgrimages with people carrying the cross through the Damascus Gate and up to the Garden Tomb. If you Google it, you can see it, and there's beautiful videos of the Garden Tomb. It's called the Protestant Garden Tomb. And when I stepped into it, well, first of all, when I was there, all this angelic download, and some pictures have orbs of Mother Mary in them. So that was very exciting, but I didn't know that. I could just sense things. But it is out the Damascus Gate, and then the hill of Golgotha is to the right of the Garden Tomb. And then right in front, if you can see in this slide right here, I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, but it's down the stairs. And this is Joseph of Arimathea's wine press, and it's, labeled as such. And Joseph of Arimathea's home would have been back here by the wall, which has all been cemented in. So that's Israeli territory. This is privately owned land by some non-denominational Protestant group in England. And then it's beautifully kept up, as you can see all the geraniums everywhere. And you can even see, if you look carefully, where the stone would have been rolled, the large stone that is spoken of in the Bible that sealed the tomb. The Romans came and sealed the tomb so nobody could get the body of Jesus. But you can see the outline of where the stone was, and there's a little trough that would have fit the stone. So
like it's a big wheel, kind of
like a giant water wheel, like you've seen a mill
like
wheel,
a millstone.
Millstone, exactly. But it was giant. But that's in another mountain somewhere in Israel, and a group of Protestants thought it was a significant relic, so they took it away from the site. But it makes the site more accessible anyway. But you can see that it really was the tomb. So anyway, I stepped into the tomb and looked to my right, and there it was. I recognized that that was where Jeshua lay. And I was like, I'm completely overwhelmed with this feeling of recognition and knowingness. You know, how you have those moments of deja vu, or whatever you want to call it, where you've been there before. And my brother, just to test me, because he had heard the past life regression, the first one that I had done. I've done quite a few past life regressions with my life in that first century with Jeshua. But he heard the first regression, and he goes, well, I wonder, Marsh, which way was the body laying? And I just told him it was laying toward it was laying here on the slab, and it was facing toward the Damascus Gate. And then I was authenticated 1 second later when the guide came in, and he had a big tour coming through, and Jim asked the guide, which way did the body lie? And he described it exactly as I said. So my brother, he's a Catholic. He has doubts about my channeling and my spirituality. He knows I'm very spiritual, but he doesn't, necessarily go along with the past life, though he did tell me that he has had mystical experiences going to Israel where he dreamt that Jesus was right with him. And so we stayed in that tomb discussing it, and I listened to everything that the guide said, and it didn't contradict my intuitive knowingness. So that was confirmation that I had really been there. And the tomb has been disputed, but the scholars in the 1800s and 1900s, they were doing more archaeology, and they kind of rediscovered this, because there were a lot of scholars that attributed Jesus's resurrection to the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre. But that information was brought in by Saint Helena, and that was in the 3rd or 4th century, 350 AD, when she was trying to convert her husband, Constantine, to Christianity. She made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and claimed that she had found the site where the Holy Cross was, and then therefore that had to be where the church needed to be built. And there was an old tomb there too. So there are different theories, but when I went to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I had a mystical experience too. But this day was extraordinary, like no other day in my life, because of that confirmation of the energies. Though I have had mystical experiences with Laura at the stone circles and elsewhere at Magdalene's Well, and everywhere else. We've stepped into these sacred sites, and they're all on ley lines, and they all correspond. So historically speaking, back to the story, the Protestant archaeologists began digging, and this was always rumored to be Jesus's true place of burial. But when there's all these wine presses and wells and artifacts that relate to Joseph of Arimathea, this had to have been his tomb. And there are old maps of the digs that they did. So they eventually restored it to this beautiful, immaculate state where there's all these gorgeous flowers, and it's a very peaceful vibe. And a lot of people come to this tomb to celebrate Easter. And now they would be celebrating Easter today or tomorrow. And the thousands of pilgrims come in. So I went on the tour in spring, but I was still healing from my brain surgery. And I went as a healing tour. I didn't intend to write any book on my experiences with Jeshua, but he asked me later to go ahead and put everything down as things came together more completely for me. And so there's archaeological evidence to support that this was the original tomb, and a lot of archaeological studies have been done and are still being done. And there's other tombs that have been discovered and that I discuss in my book, Mary Magdalene Speaks, and there's other mysteries that are yet unsolved, because there's a family tomb that was buried in one of the Israeli suburbs, and that had ossuaries corresponding to all of Jeshua's relatives. And there were bones found in the ossuaries. But to my knowledge, Mary Magdalene wouldn't have been there, but her name is inscribed on one of the ossuaries. And Joseph is ascribed to one of them, and Mary is ascribed. And these are all simple Hebrew written words. But mainstream archaeology discounts this because it interferes with the Christian story. And so, if you're, the head of a department at a Christian university, and you're going to say that, these other tombs belong to the Holy Family, or God forbid, belong to Jesus, well, that would get you in heaps of trouble and you lose your job. So, they only go so far, but they buried people in an open tomb with linen. And then after a time, they would take the bones only and put them in an ossuary. And I saw a lot of ossuaries when I was in Israel too, and they're all around this site. So I don't claim to know it all. I just feel that when I got the confirmation of stepping in the tomb, that was enough for me. This is my brother Jim, and this is our way to the Garden Tomb, which is directly outside the Damascus Gate and the Garden of Gethsemane. So everything flows with the biblical narrative, and that's very helpful. And this is Jim with his friend, and I don't think you can see it, but there's a Mother Mary figure inside this orb. And that was the morning that we went to the tomb. This is inside the Garden Tomb, you know.
You can make your screen bigger, Marcia. You can, just expand the image on your screen.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Thank you.
Yeah, so make
Okay,
it bigger and then
let's see if we
shift
can
it.
go
So
to
that's
the orb.
yeah.
So there's a kind of a female figure that I see standing there, and there's also a cross this way. And I also see purples and blues, and it looks like a face with Mother Mary. But I don't know if you see that or not. But
It just looks sort of impressionistic. You can sort of see purples and greens, yellows.
There's this giant orb, and an orb is usually a sign of, a spiritual master around. It can be. And it can also be just a reflection of light. So we have to be careful in interpreting our orbs. I got a friend that thinks everything that I do has orbs in it. She's into orbs and angels. And she's funny because I said, no, that turquoise thing, that's part of the reflection of my camera. And she goes, oh, no, it's your personal orb. I know it. And here's how I looked after brain surgery. I was totally, like fat because I had to take steroids, and my hair was short and it was shaven on this one side, or not shaven. I guess I lost hair because I had recently received the brain surgery had been done maybe, I don't know, maybe in February. And this was a trip in May. So
you were very brave to go on a trip.
I know.
Months
and
after
I tripped
surgery.
and fell because the doctors told me, no, you cannot go on this tour. You will trip, or you will have health problems. You could have a stroke, blah, blah, blah. And, I had my doubts. And then the day before the trip, I came down with this weird case of diarrhea, and I was just doubtful, but I had to overcome my doubt in order to pursue this, because I felt my soul calling me, and I felt Jesus calling me. Even my stepbrother called and said, I see you walking with Jesus in Israel. You better take that trip, Marcia. So I'm ever so glad that I did, because I got rebaptized in the Jordan River too. It was also very cool. But we did it on our own. We didn't go to the commercial sites or anything. Jim was already familiar because he has United Airlines privileges, and we all flew there under his buddy pass thing. We had to go standby, and we flew over with a bunch of rabbis and a bunch of priests. So we had all the holy people accompanying us on the plane, and we all got on. It was three of us. He had a girlfriend, and then it was Jim and myself. And he did it just for me because he thought I was going to die. He's my brother, and I didn't know if I was going to survive, but other angelic channels had told me that I would become a teacher for at least 20 years with my angel classes. So I thought, that's a good sign. I'm going to take it that I'm going to live. I put out my positive thinking as much as I could, but this took a great deal of out of me. And the day before this happened, I don't think you can see it, but one of my legs is very swollen. I think it was this. Yeah, it was the left one. I tripped. In fact, I had a dizzy spell, and I was going over to the refractories. We stayed in monasteries the whole time, and they were only like $20, $30 a night. What a bargain, for this kind of trip of a lifetime, right? And so I did have a little dizzy spell. I tripped and I fell the right way. Luckily, I caught myself, so I didn't break a bone, but my left foot was swollen to twice or three times the size. It was all black, and I had to get ice. And I welcomed a priest praying on me during the mass because I could barely walk. And they the first day that I arrived, we had gone down to the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, and we had gone swimming. And I had a hard time because it was a total incline, and my foot was like barely working, and I had to manage in my old sandals. And then when you get to the Salt Sea, there's rock crystal, and you have to wear sandals. So oddly enough, Spirit always provided a way. I had been inspired to buy this beautiful new pair of sandals in the oldest city in the world, in Jericho. So I bought the sandals, a good thing, because I ruined my sandals going in. But the salt water was interesting, but it was too difficult for me to manage with that. But everybody gave me a hand wherever they could. This is the tree of Zacchaeus, the story of Zacchaeus, who went to see Jesus and climbed the tree. He was the rich man. And so this is still said to exist. So we're going backwards. And that was in Jericho. And this is one of my wonderful pictures I captured from the garden. So every bit of nature was like superior in every way. It was like everything was glowing with life. It just reflected the resurrection energy, now indescribable, and just indescribable and beautiful in every way. And I could feel Jeshua's presence. This is the Garden of Gethsemane, and these are the old olive trees. And there's a part in my book where Joseph describes all of the artifacts, and the grail artifact of the cross comes alive, speaks. When I was visiting Joseph of Arimathea and Bob's study on the other side, and it's confirmed that Jesus was crucified on an olive tree. And, it wasn't a fancy thing at all, but that's sad. So anyway, let's go back and see. This is one of the many tombs attributed to Mother Mary. And this was, there's always a candle lit. And this is in Mount Zion, which is where the Last Supper was held. So this is a shrine near the Last Supper. And these are all ancient old places. And there you see me, very tired, walking. We walked considering the foot that was barely working at all, and I'm not real great with hiking anymore, as Laura can attest to. This is Samar Sahar, and I would like you to surround her in the light today. She is still with us. She lives in Israel, and she's a blessed person. And she attends daily mass and ran an orphanage. She's a Catholic Palestinian, and she ran a beautiful orphanage in the village of Bethany. And she took me to Bethany for the day, one of these days. And it was so amazing because I recognized the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, and the tomb of Lazarus as well. And she called her home the Lazarus Home for Girls. Unfortunately, she's a Christian in a minority, and she's a Palestinian. I don't know what the status of today is, but I know there's a lot of fighting going on in the Dome of the Rock and around there, and in Lebanon, and they've been bombing back and forth between Lebanon and Israel. So she asked for prayers for her. She lives in the old city, and she's very devout Catholic. So she took me to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and here we are on more and more stairs. We had to climb to the dome outside of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then she wanted to go to the market afterwards. I'm sitting here feeling, whoa, but it all was so perfect in divine order. And she's a lovely, lovely woman. And so the home was raided by the Palestinian Authority, and it was shut down because she said that she felt that maybe here is the top of the dome, and this is Jim's girlfriend at the time, and there's the dome from the outside. But she said it had something to do with Christians versus Arab, and that the part of the Palestinian PLO didn't want her teaching the children in Christian because they were swept off the streets. Maybe they were Muslim, and she was sending them with her own private money to an Orthodox school for Christianity. So there's still a lot of religious misunderstanding, but in my book, she's a living saint. And I used to go and spend, donate every Christmas, and the kids would come on my program as well. So this is the house of Martha and Mary and the raising of Lazarus. And we attended a mass there. And of course, anytime my brother could attend a mass, he was right there. Okay, come on, Marsh, we're going to mass now. Like, well, maybe not, I'm not too big on Catholic, but that's okay. Anyway, it's beautiful to see all these things. And there we were at the mass, and there's the beautiful portrayal of Jesus coming in. And I tell about this in my book too, because he was telepathic and our brother had died. And I was the one that called to him. I'm sure Mary did too. But he said, I'm coming, Martha. Just wait, So, and then this is the beautiful quote, because I was more busy in that lifetime and I was more outgoing and friendly, while Mary had been a very quiet person until Jesus worked with her and taught her to express her beautiful teaching. And she ended up being his master teacher, but that too got buried by the patriarchal church fathers. One thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen the good part, meaning that Mary was the holy one that sat at the feet of Jesus and listened to his teaching, while I was the one that was always going, but I'm not getting enough help. People need to help me clean up the dishes and cook and blah, blah, blah. And I was more of a practical soul and in that lifetime as it is portrayed. And I was a worrier, just like I am in this one. So a lot of our traits do carry over. Now I'm going to shrink this back down to normal size. This is standing in front of the Lazarus tomb. And I recognize this on the first floor. But Jim and Ingrid decided to climb into the actual tomb. And I tried one step, and it was like 2 feet down and it was all soaking wet. I'm really glad I didn't do that. I wouldn't have made it out at all. I probably would have slipped and broke a leg. So I got a little too over enthusiastic, but I spent the afternoon with Samar in the front of the Lazarus tomb entrance. And then we went down 4 stairs, and it was all stairs, of course. And here I am with my scarf covering up everything. But she had a lot of Arabs working with her at the, and there is she handed me the mustard plant, and she said, she used the biblical quote about, if you have faith of the mustard seed, you shall be healed. So she was praying for my healing, and she took me all around, and there I am. And I don't look like myself there. I'm all swollen from the steroids and everything. And there's my brother, but he seemed to have boundless energy, but Samar and I were about on the same par. So it was okay, But there we are having lunch, and she was hoping, these were employees of the Bethany Home for Girls, and they were all Muslim. And she gets along with the Muslims just perfectly, but they're all Palestinian and they speak in Arabic. Here is the ancient Roman arch of the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, and he's located on this level, but there's an ancient early Christian church in there. And then this is the entrance gate to the home of Martha and Mary, where the disciples would have been during and after the crucifixion and resurrection. And these are some of the Arab streets and the view of the, and these are ossuaries. And this is Jim and another, I said it Lazarus tomb, but this is another tomb. But I'm really glad I didn't go down there. Here's the plaque. And then there's another, this is the entrance, outside entrance, where I said you could take a step down. It was about 2 feet each step. And I luckily had the common sense not to try to that day.
Oh, wait, go back. That's a nice picture of you all together with them.
Oh, it is. It's really beautiful. And
you look very cute.
Yeah.
I didn't feel very cute at the time. And I always had to wear a head covering because part of my head was bald.
But you fit right in with the head covering there.
I did. I really
normal.
was glad. And I was advised to wear a head covering because we were going in. Bethany is Muslim territory. It's Palestinian, and it's all gates and everything and locks and checkpoint and, all that stuff. And, in my other book with Diana, she writes about world peace and how if they just create the Palestinian state coexistent with Israel, that would solve the entire dilemma of terrorism. But at this point, it seems like they've done nothing to help that. But there's Bethany from the road. So at the time, in the biblical times, Bethany was just a mile or so from the site of the crucifixion and the Garden of Gethsemane. So now you have to travel by highway, and it takes 10 or 15 minutes, and you have to go through all these checkpoints. So then there's the market, and it's in Arabic and is Hebrew. And then those are all the paraphernalia at the market and whatnot. And these are some of the most beautiful icons. So
beautiful.
I know. So I'm going to stop screen share, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can just do some Reiki for anybody that would like to do that. And let me see if I can get the recording to stop here. All right. And thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I hope the other people that are listening will check out my book, Mary Magdalene Speaks, and the Holy Grail Bloodline and Secrets of the Divine Feminine.